My money's gone, your locks are changed, and now you're throwing my clothes into the street," I shouted as my landlord kicked another box off the curb. People stopped walking. Phones came out instantly. Right there in front of my apartment building, Derek Holloway stood smiling while my bags split open across the sidewalk like garbage. He pointed at the eviction notice taped to the door. "No rent, no apartment, sleep outside for all I care." But that's what made no sense. I paid 3 days earlier, I had the confirmation, and Derek knew it. Then I noticed something strange. He wasn't acting angry anymore. He kept checking his phone, looking over his shoulder, like he was waiting for someone to arrive before I could say anything else. That's when he stepped closer and quietly said, "You should have left this alone, Miranda." And the second he said that, I knew exactly how scared he really was. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for updates. I stared at him for a second, really stared at him, while traffic rolled past behind me and my entire life sat scattered across the sidewalk. Derek Holloway loved humiliating people. Everyone in the building knew it. If somebody was late on rent, he'd post notices on their doors where everyone could see them. If tenants complained about leaks or heat, he'd threaten to raise their rent or find someone easier to deal with. I'd watched grown adults shrink the second he walked into the lobby. But this felt different. Because Derek wasn't trying to embarrass me anymore. He was trying to shut me up. "Miranda, just leave," Lena said softly from near the entrance. She was the building manager, early 40s, usually calm, usually talkative. Not today. Today she wouldn't even look me in the eye. 3 days earlier, I'd handed her the rent confirmation myself in the office downstairs. She checked it, nodded, and told me everything was fine. Now she stood behind Derek with her arms crossed tight against herself like she wanted to disappear. I stepped toward her. "Tell them," I said, "tell them you saw the payment clear." Before she could answer, Derek cut in loudly. "She's lying." He ripped one of my kitchen boxes open and dumped everything onto the pavement. Plates shattered. A coffee mug rolled into the gutter. A few people in the crowd actually flinched. "Call the police already," somebody muttered. Derek immediately snapped his head toward the voice. For half a second, panic flashed across his face. Not anger, panic. That's when I noticed the paper in his hand. The eviction notice. The account number listed under missed payments wasn't the same account tenants normally used. And the signature at the bottom. It looked copied. My stomach tightened. This wasn't some mistake. Derek had planned this. A black SUV suddenly turned onto our street and slowed near the building. The second Derek saw it, the color drained from his face. And then he whispered something under his breath that I was never supposed to hear. "She got here too early." Derek recovered fast. Too fast. The panic vanished from his face so quickly that if I hadn't been watching him carefully, I might have missed it completely. He straightened his coat, folded the fake eviction notice, and forced that same smug smile back into place just as the black SUV parked across the street. But nobody got out. The engine stayed running. And Derek kept glancing at it. I crouched down and grabbed one of the papers blowing across the sidewalk. My lease copy, except someone had highlighted a clause that wasn't even in the original agreement I signed. I looked up slowly. "You changed the lease." Derek laughed louder than necessary. "You really want to do this in public?" "You already started it in public." A few people nearby exchanged looks. That mattered. Because tenants in this building usually stayed quiet. Derek counted on that. Most people here worked long hours, lived paycheck to paycheck, and avoided conflict because they were scared of losing their apartments. And honestly, they had reason to be scared. An older woman named Mrs. Alvarez stood near the mailboxes clutching her grocery cart. 2 months earlier, Derek threatened to evict her over a noise complaint after she asked him to fix black mold in her bathroom. Another tenant, Jamal, got hit with mysterious late fees every single month no matter when he paid. Nobody challenged him. Until now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered without taking my eyes off Derek. A distorted voice said quietly, "Stop asking questions about the payment records." Then the call disconnected. My grip tightened around the phone. Derek saw my expression change. And smiled. That told me everything. Lena suddenly rushed down the steps toward me. "Miranda, please," she whispered urgently, "just go for tonight." "Why?" I asked. "What's he hiding?" Her eyes flicked toward Derek. Fear's real fear. Then she leaned closer and said something that made my chest go cold. "He deleted files from the system this morning." Before I could respond, Derek grabbed her arm hard enough to make her stumble backward. "That's enough," he snapped. The crowd went silent. Lena pulled her arm away immediately, but she still wouldn't look at me. Derek pointed toward the street. "Take your things and disappear before this gets worse." I slowly stood up. Then I looked past him, through the building entrance, toward the leasing office downstairs. The office door was slightly open. And inside, sitting on the desk behind the glass partition, was a folder I recognized instantly. Dark blue. City issued. Derek followed my eyes. That was the moment his confidence cracked again. I smiled slightly. And said, "So you found the audit file?" The blood drained from his face. "What audit file?" somebody in the crowd asked immediately. Derek reacted before I could answer. "There is no audit," he barked. "She's trying to scare people because she got caught not paying rent." But his voice had changed. Too sharp, too fast. And now the tenants were noticing it too. Phones stayed pointed at him. People stopped drifting away. Even the neighbors watching from their balconies leaned farther over the rails trying to hear. I kept my eyes on Derek. "Then why are you deleting payment records?" For the first time since this started, he didn't answer right away. That silence hit harder than yelling. Mrs. Alvarez spoke up from the sidewalk. "You told me my deposit was missing too." Another tenant added, "And you charged me 3 late fees after I paid cash." Derek spun toward them instantly. "Don't start this nonsense." But the mood had shifted. The crowd wasn't watching me anymore. They were watching him. Lena looked like she was about to be sick. I stepped closer to her carefully. "Lena," I said quietly. "What inspection was he talking about?" Her eyes widened. Derek moved immediately. "Go upstairs now." But she didn't move. And that hesitation told me everything. "He made me change the records," she whispered, barely audible. The entire sidewalk went silent. Derek's face hardened. "Watch yourself." Tears filled Lena's eyes. I didn't know what else to do. He said if I refused, he'd report me and cancel my sponsorship paperwork. A murmur spread through the crowd. Now people were recording openly. Not me. Him. I could see Derek realizing it in real time. His control was slipping. I kept my voice calm. "Why did you need me out of the building before the inspection?" Lena swallowed hard. Then she said the one thing Derek clearly never wanted anyone hearing out loud. "Because apartment 4C wasn't supposed to exist on the records." A chill ran through the crowd. Derek lunged toward her. "Shut up." She stumbled backward, terrified. At that exact moment, the black SUV doors finally opened. 2 people stepped out wearing city identification badges. And Derek looked genuinely trapped for the first time all night. One of the investigators glanced at me and asked, "Miranda, did he access the storage unit already?" Derek's face went completely pale. Derek took 1 step backward. Then another. Like he was calculating whether he could still get out of this. The 2 investigators crossed the street quickly, both carrying folders and sealed evidence bags. The older one, a grey-haired woman in a navy coat, stopped beside me and looked directly at Derek. "Mr. Holloway," she said evenly, "we need immediate access to all management offices and maintenance units." Derek forced out a laugh. "This is insane. You can't just show up because of some angry tenant making accusations online." The investigator didn't blink. "We're here because someone inside your company altered financial records connected to an active housing fraud inquiry. The crowd erupted into whispers. I watched Derek's eyes dart toward the leasing office again. Toward the basement entrance behind it. That was the first real confirmation. Whatever he was hiding was still inside the building. One of the investigators turned to me. Did he remove anything after this morning? Not enough, I answered. Derek pointed at me violently. Who the hell are you? The question landed heavily in the silence. Not because people were curious anymore. Because suddenly everyone understood there was something much bigger happening. Before I could answer, city inspectors arrived behind the investigators carrying cameras and clipboards. They headed straight into the building while Derek tried blocking the entrance. You need warrants for this, he snapped. The grey-haired investigator calmly pulled folded documents from her folder. Already approved. Derek stopped talking. Tenants gathered closer as inspectors moved floor by floor. Within minutes, radios started crackling with updates. Unregistered electrical work confirmed. Major mold concealment in Unit 12B. False occupancy records match the complaint. Then came the one that changed everything. Hidden file room located behind 4C. Derek closed his eyes. Just for a second. Like he already knew it was over. Mrs. Alvarez stared at him in disbelief. You lied to all of us. Jamal stepped forward next. You stole from people. Derek looked around desperately, but nobody was backing him up anymore, not even Lena. She finally stepped beside me instead. And that seemed to break something inside him. He pointed at me again, furious now. You set me up. I met his stare calmly. No, Derek, you exposed yourself. One of the investigators approached us, holding a thick stack of printed records. She looked directly at me and asked, do you want to tell them who authorized this operation? The entire crowd turned toward me. And Derek whispered under his breath, oh God. I looked around at the crowd slowly. At the tenants standing in slippers on the sidewalk. At the people still recording. At Lena trying not to cry. And finally at Derek Holloway, who looked nothing like the man laughing at me an hour earlier. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my identification badge. The city investigator beside me nodded once. I held the badge up where everyone could see it. My name is Miranda Cole, I said calmly, Senior Financial Investigator with the Housing Fraud and Anti-Corruption Task Force. Nobody spoke. Even the traffic noise behind us seemed to disappear for a second. Derek stared at the badge like he couldn't process what he was seeing. I continued. For the last 8 months, we've been investigating illegal evictions, falsified maintenance records, stolen deposits and fraudulent accounting connected to multiple properties owned by Derek Holloway. The crowd exploded into shocked whispers. Mrs. Alvarez covered her mouth. Jamal just shook his head slowly like everything suddenly made sense. I looked directly at Derek. You weren't being investigated because tenants complained too much. You were being investigated because money kept disappearing. One of the investigators opened the recovered file box beside us. Inside were folders, hard drives, payment ledgers, and printed transfer records tied to shell companies Derek had been using for years. Fake repair companies. Fake maintenance invoices. Hidden accounts. The entire scheme. And the thing that finally destroyed him. My rent payment. 3 days earlier, Derek discovered I'd requested internal accounting verification through Lena. He panicked when he realized the request matched restricted city audit formatting. That's why he altered the records and tried forcing me out before inspectors officially arrived. He thought publicly humiliating me would make me disappear quietly. Instead, he exposed himself in front of half the building. Lena finally spoke, voice shaking. He made me delete transactions. He said tenants would never know. Derek turned toward her furiously. You think they'll protect you? No, she whispered, but at least I'm done protecting you. That hit him harder than the investigators did. Police arrived minutes later. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just efficiently. Two officers walked straight up to Derek, while another began reading charges connected to fraud, illegal eviction practices, evidence tampering, and financial crimes. And suddenly, the same man who'd thrown my belongings into the street couldn't even look anyone in the eye. Nobody defended him. Nobody moved. Tenants simply watched in silence as he was escorted toward the police car parked at the curb. Right past the broken dishes. Right past my torn garbage bags. Right past the eviction notice he'd waved around like a weapon. Mrs. Alvarez stepped closer to me carefully after the police car pulled away. "Does this mean," her voice cracked, "does this mean we weren't crazy?" I shook my head gently. "No, you were being exploited." She started crying right there on the sidewalk. Not loudly. Just exhausted. Like years of fear finally hit her all at once. Over the next few weeks, emergency inspections shut down several of Derek's properties. Civil lawsuits followed almost immediately. Tenants recovered stolen deposits. Temporary housing assistance was approved for residents displaced by the unsafe conditions hidden inside the building. And Laineth. She cooperated fully with investigators. The city helped protect her immigration status after confirming Derek had used it to threaten her into silence. 3 weeks later, I came back to the building one last time. New management had already started repairs. Workers carried supplies through the lobby while tenants slowly moved back into restored apartments. The place felt different. Lighter. Mrs. Alvarez spotted me near the entrance and smiled for the first time since I'd met her. "You gave people their homes back," she said. I looked up at the building quietly. At the same doorway, where Derek stood smirking while my life sat scattered across the sidewalk. "Sleep outside for all I care." I still remembered every word. Funny thing about power, though. Sometimes it only lasts until the truth shows up at the front door.